And with, I suppose, worldly parents, your Lokic parents, you can find that to a certain extent, unless one of them walks away from you, or both of them walk away from you. But this experience of coming home to the Father has all three in it, and it's eternal. There's no movement in the home. There's no fear that Baba's going to leave us. So the root of so much of our insecurity and fear lies because we still carry pockets of limited experiences of security, safety, and intimacy, comfort. And whilst, you know, the Lokic mother can give comfort and care, she can't give you the experience of home. Because that experience of being in the home that's eternal, that's unshakable, immovable, is like a home base. That's the ultimate comfort base. Because it doesn't matter where you go, that base never changes. And then the relationship with the eternal Father. You know, the Father is the backbone, allowing the child to grow and explore in a container of security and safety. And yet providing gentle directions along the way. And so this feeling that, you know, the basis of our root fears is at some point in our 63 births, we have experienced human loss, and we've experienced broken security, broken intimacy, and broken safety. And so somehow as we sit here with Baba today, can I completely accept that Baba is always there for me? Baba's directions will guide me to my freedom and liberation and independence. And that the home is eternally my home. Today, Sudesh Ben was reading Murli, and she was saying there's at least over 15 names for home. So there's Nirvana, the land beyond sound, Shantidham, the land of peace, Moolvatan, which is the land of your original qualities, etc., etc. She didn't name all of them, but there is a list somewhere. It's interesting how Baba says it's the Father that gives the inheritance and makes you a master. And that when we become unhappy, we call out to the Father. And it makes me wonder, what's the relationship we have with Father in Satyug? In Satyug, there's no need for safety or security or intimacy. We're fully loving and fully independent. And so Father's just a name, but it's not a relationship in the way we understand it now. It's for namesake, to identify your place, I suppose. This whole theme Baba's taking up of the incorporeal and the corporeal Father. And when you feel it at an energetic level, the experience of our corporeal fathers, for most births, I think for many Brahmins, has been a very secure experience. And what is then the experience with the unlimited Father? And I think that security has less to do with a physical presence and more to do with his Srimad. That you experience the security and stability of truth. And I suppose Bap Dada had to come down into Brahma Bapa's body because we needed the physical. He had to wean us off births of having felt the security and safety and comfort of the physical. And so Bap Dada spent decades in Brahma Baba's body to give us another taste of sweetness that made us experience our independence. And now that we are becoming independent, he's departing and weaning us off that. And all we're left with is the stability of the truth we've imbibed. It's quite a subtle thing, the relationship with the incorporeal Father. You know, this whole concept of the yagya. The yagya is Baba's energy at this time. It's a container in which Baba's energy does so many things for us. It gives us love, affection, nurture, care, a container to practice our dharana in, but it's also a container for purification and for karmic settlement. And so there's so much that we receive by remembering Baba that enables all of this to happen. It's not just the limited experience of love we've experienced in our physical births of comfort, security, and intimacy. There's so much more in that love. There's sakash, there's light and might that helps us overcome tests and obstacles. There's strength, there's inspiration, there's shakti, soft power that helps us to build our capacities to become a form of soft power. And there's affection. So much of that energy is what the yagya is. It's not a physical building. It really is Baba's energy as Rudra. Absorbed what's been shared, and something that speaks very loudly from the Murli today was Baba wasn't doing either or. He was doing and. Incorporeal Father and corporeal Father, relationship with both. And I think the way I see things, because I've grown up in Gyan, is that you love everything, but you love the point and the peak that little bit much more. So it suddenly reframes your relationship with everything in a very different way, that the container that we have, that we've come to Baba with, is nothing to be afraid of. It is what it is, but it's like a springboard that helps us to also take from Shiv Baba. Now, the role that Brahma Baba plays, you know how I like to see it, is Brahma Baba provides a more subtle springboard. Brahma Baba's companionship, because Brahma Baba lends us his face, his avyakt presence, his eyes, that we feel the humanness, but at a more subtle level. Because for me, the whole journey is about becoming fully lovely, but fully loving, in the sense that we start with love, the love of the limited. And of course, the love of the limited is limited comfort, limited security, limited feeling of safety. Those are all limited comforts. But what Baba is truth. And what Brahma Baba is divinity. And so that peak is like climbing a mountain. And what I love about Brahma Baba, and I'm always humbled by it, is that he's hung around for us. He's hung around to provide us with an avyakt presence, because we know we can't just go from being in a container to out of a container like that. It's impossible. It is a transition process, but the process is always and. It's not either or. And I'm so grateful to Brahma Baba for his eyes, for his face, for him just sitting there and just waiting for us children, that, you know, when I can't reach Shiv Baba, then I can go to Brahma Baba and his eyes will draw me in, or Shiv Baba's presence will work through Brahma to draw me in. And I remember this particular young sister during the youth retreat. Her name's Bea, and she was perhaps 13 or 14. And we were in a session with Brother Bridgemohan. And she was, this is the wonderful thing about working with young people, is they're so transparent. And she said, I have a question, Brother Bridgemohan. I love Shiv Baba, and I'm remembering Shiv Baba, but sometimes it feels too much. It's a little bit like making chai, is the chai is tasty, but then it's just overflowing out of the pan and it's just too much for me to handle. What do I do? And Bridgemore Bai was very sweet. He came back with a beautiful response. He said, yeah, sometimes our plug, you put it into a socket and the voltages are different. And so you need a transformer in between. And Brahma Baba plays the role of that transformer that allows us to receive the I will say, the intensity of Shiv Baba's power in a soft way, that translates it into humanness. Because we can't just let go of our humanity. We have to do both to hold the peak of spiritual truth and elevate as human beings. That's why Baba puts us even greater than he is, because we do two things. And it reminded me of, sorry, I'm bubbling here a bit, but this whole thing of occult power. Why did Baba mention that at the end? When these sadhus and sannyasis learn to kind of walk on fire or sleep on fire, I remember many, many years ago, I think it was in India, we were somewhere, and this particular sadhu was talking about his experience. What makes him walk on fire or even lie on fire is that in his mind, he has he has built a relationship with fire and reached a peak point. He reaches like this peak point where he feels he's fused with fire. And it's a very, very tiny pinhole of a point. But when he keeps his concentration there, then the fire doesn't affect him. It doesn't affect his body. And I thought to myself, wow, that's like, in every energy of matter, there is a peak experience. There is a bond of experience. And if we touch that, then that matter can't influence us because we hold a relationship with it. And so in the same way with Shiv Baba, that's the peak, that intense purity of power and virtue and light and might, that if we just hold that peak, then we can tolerate the human journey better. And Brahma Baba, supports us, is our pinhole to that peak. Because Brahma Baba himself has made himself avyakt and perfect. And so the real Father of humanity shows us and lets us experience the peak of being the souls of the incorporeal Father. These two have just such an amazing partnership. And they are both ours. And that's what I feel is so nurturing and nourishing. And they are so available. I mean, Brahma Baba has been without a physical body for decades now, over 50 years, to give us his companionship because he wasn't there in the Sakar form for us. So in so many ways, the Father of humanity is accompanying us on this journey to the peak. And the beautiful thing is that, okay, Shiv Baba came looking for us. Shiv Baba made us belong to him. And it's with Shiv Baba in the home that we experience, unshakability of staying somewhere. Nobody's going to leave us in the home. And yet, Brahma Baba makes us come home to our humanity, makes us come home to the highest human experience, which is so important for us. So for me, it's not about two worlds, it's one world, but it's a gradient. It's like an escalation an elevation experience where I'm living in the human world with what I have, but because my concentration levels are building to stay with the peak, and I'm supported by Brahma Baba's subtle experience and presence, that, the matter in the world will start to organize itself. Things, I don't have to worry about matter. They will take care of themselves if I honor that relationship. Many times we put the relationship with matter above the relationship with the peak. So, for example, it'll manifest as, well, let me just get comfortable first. Let me just feed the body first. Then I'll remember Baba. No, it works the other way around. Let me taste Baba first. Let me release the freedom of loving Baba first. And then whatever I need from matter in that moment, I'll take a little drop of it. I don't need everything from matter. So it finishes worry. It finishes worry at a very, very deep level. And I remember Avyak Bapdada saying to us that what is the method for giving the return of love? It is to make yourself free from worry. So for me, this is a journey of the highest experience of full love. And we have to give ourselves, and being in the subtle, the subtle world, it's a region, but the subtle is the freedom of feeling, the freedom of pure feelings. That where in the corporeal world for 63 births, I may have had feelings of loss or fear that were constricting my expression, that were, caging me in some way. In the subtle, with Brahma Baba, I can love as much as I want. I can be as much as I want. And so that honoring that relationship with Brahma Baba is the freedom of the subtle. And that's what the heart needs, the freedom to love fully, the freedom to be loving completely. And so then we move from having love to being love, in the journey. And I feel it's such a wonderful journey. And it's thanking our fortune that we have so much at the end of the Iron Age, that whatever we have around us is a gift of our own karma, is a gift of our own truth and the manners of our truth and our greatness. And so we're supported. And so there's nothing to worry about. It is what it is. But now I have to honor the relationship with the peak first and taste that first every day. And, at a practical level, what does that look like? When I sit and I'm eating, for example, I always have had this practice. I always feel that my eating is serving the world, because I always have this feeling when I sit with Baba, every morsel that's going into this mouth, every experience is feeding a hungry stomach in the world. And so for me, eating in Baba's remembrance is such a joyous act, because I feel like it's satisfying hungry stomachs in the world. And that's what that rus, that taste, and then having the feeling when you remember Baba first, that Baba's feeding me. Brahma Baba, I've had this feeling with Daddy. I remember in Gyan Sarovar, we had a retreat to start at 10 o'clock. It was Borg on Thursday. Everything finished late. I didn't have time to have breakfast. I was sorting out last minute registrations and things. And I was running from Vishnupuri to the meditation hall. And at about 10 o'clock, 5 to 10, I was running with a lot of speed. And Daddy comes down the road, the driveway. And I'm like, oh no, I can't avoid her. She's coming down the driveway. And so she sees me and she goes, come here, in her drishti. And so I go to her and she looks at me and she says, have you had breakfast? And I don't say anything because I haven't had breakfast and I'm more in a hurry to get the session started. And then she looks at me again and she says, have you had breakfast? And I just put my head down in silence. So she knows. So she doesn't say a word. She just takes my hand and she walks me up that ramp to dining room number 5, where she was having breakfast. Her breakfast was laid out. She sits me down. And of course, in me is all this, oh my God, I've got a session to start. I've only got 5 minutes. And then I just have to. So I go and sit down. And it's interesting what happened in that moment. The concern and the worry of having to start the session and honor that relationship with everybody there, and of my duty, my responsibility. And I met that head on as I sat down on the table, because she didn't say a word. She just created an atmosphere of silence where I could just meet that experience and then just let it go. And I then sat in silence and I just accepted the breakfast that was being given to me. And then what I felt as I put the first morsel in my mouth, that Brahma Baba came in, put his arms in my arms and was feeding me. And it was such a lovely experience of being fed breakfast by Baba. And I thought, wow, in the rush of wanting to honor matter and honor my responsibility and my duty, I would have missed out on this subtle experience of being sustained by Baba. So it's such a beautiful thing when we give ourselves the space in silence to honor that relationship first before any physical activity. And, in brain science, they now talk about it a lot. There are 2 ways to let memories fade, worries and fears and losses, whatever those memory packages are. One is a replacement, right? But the most effective one they found is when you actually meet it head on and just let it merge. They call it suppressing it, but we're not suppressing it. We're using our relationship with Baba and the connection and the accumulated support we have at a spiritual level to face it, touch it, and then let it merge and say, this doesn't belong to me anymore. This is not who I am anymore. And to have the respect to saying, I belong to Baba. Baba belongs to me. Baba's come for me. And then entering into that lateral responsibility. And it's so nourishing. It's so uplifting. It's so gratifying. So, it's a beautiful Murali today. It's not either or, it's and. And that's what I love about it. Love everything. It's being loving to the fullest in our spiritual and human journeys. So let's go home in a second. The bodiless stage. Incarnate into our divine form, the deity. Move into the benevolent form, the worthy of worship form. And then moving into the life of purity, the Brahman form. And then the form of light, the angel. Om Shanti.